Welcome everyone to WRN's Journey to 50, our virtual speaker series. We are so pleased to gather and to continue our celebration. We hope that you will join in the continuing journey by joining us for the next two programs after tonight's. May 11th, Paving the Path Ahead, Creativity and Innovation. And June 2nd is the Erev. June 3rd, the big anniversary, the 50th. We'll be celebrating on Thursday, June 2nd, WRN's 50th anniversary celebration of Rabbi Sally J. Priest.
Get it out after this.
With WRN's
Such a nudge.
afterwards. I'm going to ask everyone to remain muted, please. Both of those programs will be at 7:30 Eastern time. We'll be popping the links in the chat in a moment. We are especially grateful for WRJ's support of our program tonight through the Yes Fund. And we are proud to be grantees of the Jewish Women's Fund of Atlanta and SRE Network. And in fact, if you would like to support WRN, we hope you'll consider donating, especially to the Rabbi Sally J. Priest Endowment Fund for Equity in Jewish Life. This is a brand new endowment fund. We'll hope you'll support our ongoing work. But for now, we go to our anti-penultimate program of our speaker series. And I'm proud to introduce Rabbi Jen Lader and Rabbi Patricia Carlin Newman, who are hosting tonight's program.
Thank you, Rabbi Seymour. Welcome to the next stop on our journey to 50. Rabbi Jen Lader and I are delighted to be navigating this leg of the journey. I'll offer some thoughts on ritual. Rabbi Lader will moderate our panel, and then look forward to our sharing a special sacred moment together. In addition to the wonderful women you will meet shortly, we thank Rabbi Hara Person and Rabbi Andrea Weiss for their writing and publishing on ritual, theology, and liturgy, as well as their leadership in our movement. We have all experienced or witnessed so much disruption in the past years, months, days. Between the enduring isolation and losses of COVID, the assault on voting rights and the battle for racial justice, the brutal war in Ukraine where so many Jews have close and ancestral ties, we yearn to come together, to open the treasure chest of our tradition, to recognize the contributions of those who lead and teach us. As we celebrate 50 years of women in the rabbinate, we cherish what we have received, what we have created, and what we are bequeathing to others. Poet Elaine Marcus Starkman wrote, "We are not tintypes of great-grandmothers who served men and bore sons to sit at their feet in heaven. We are not portraits of grandmothers who fled pogroms to make myths in American sweatshops. We are not snapshots of mothers doting in despair, forcing us into pink formals and Mrs. degrees. We are a generation seeking traditions, transforming symbols, Jewish women, not yet ourselves." In 1971, our colleague Rabbi Laura Geller was in class learning about blessings at Hebrew Union College in New York. Rabbi Julius Kravitz declared, "There is no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is not a blessing." It didn't take long for Rabbi Geller to catalog all the moments in her life which had gone unmarked. In the succeeding 5 decades, Rabbi Geller and our female identified colleagues have been prodigious originators of ritual. Living in Jewish rhythms, our desire to mark occasions of importance and transition with rituals affirming our individual and our communal life has prompted us all to invention. By crafting Jewish ritual, we etch Jewish meanings into our lives, our souls, our bodies, shaping our sense of ourselves as Jews and expanding the reach of Judaism. Rituals place the individual in community, in continuity. As a young rabbi, I had the pleasure of learning with and then sadly burying anthropologist Barbara Meyerhoff, Zichrona Livracha. Her last public talk was for a conference Rabbi Geller and I organized called Illuminating the Unwritten Scroll, Women's Spirituality and Jewish Tradition. Barbara explained, ritual is the enactment of a wish. It is made up of symbols, almost always that deal with ambiguities or paradoxes, something irreconcilable. Chaos, change, disruption. Ritual glosses the contradictions and paradoxes. In ritual, it is the doing that is the believing. And the doer, being your own body, is singularly persuasive because it is your own experience which finally persuades you. Ritual makes things sacred. It sets them apart. It sanctifies them by announcing and calling attention to their specialness, Barbara said. We create rituals to ennoble the everyday. We offer them to fill in the blank spaces which we know in our bones require attention. Some now fill our rabbis' manuals and our prayer books. Rosh Chodesh, celebrating the new moon. Pregnancy loss. Welcoming daughters into the covenant. Coming out as LGBTQI+. Others are found on websites or passed around by friends. Preparing for a surgery, accepting a first job, weaning a child, healing from sexual misconduct, cooking a special family dish with your bubby's recipe, acknowledging that a loved one is terminally ill, our first gathering after quarantine. We might create a new ritual or use an old one in a new way. We might create a synagogue ceremony or a private meditation. We might write a new bracha or use traditional ones in ways they were not originally intended. When my mother died, I began asking all my observant women friends, how do Jewish women mourn their mothers? I was answered with the tradition silence. My friend, poet, playwright, and teacher, Merle Feld, encouraged me to be inventive. She gave me permission to create a new ritual for this moment of transition. My mother was an expert knitter. I had brought knitting needles and yarn to her hospital room, hoping she could knit me a baby bunting, a sleep sack for the child we had not yet conceived. She died, unable to pick up the needles. But knitting was part of my mother's Torah. So I knit daily, concluding each morning with Kaddish de Rabbanan, the mourner's Kaddish, originally said following Torah study in someone's honor. And as I knit with yarn, I knit memory. And during that year, I came to apprehend and appreciate my mother's legacy. I also came to know, as we all learn, that life is finite and aspired to become a mother myself. When we were blessed with a daughter, we wrapped her in that bunting at her Brit Bat, a gift of the journey from death to life. As a Jewish ritual, this was idiosyncratic, healing, innovative, and traditional. The form was shaped by the tradition. The content was determined by the needs that the tradition didn't address. Such moments are both personal and communal. From feminist seders to Rosh Chodesh celebrations, from honoring crones to healing services, we have created new Jewish rituals, placing ourselves and our communities in Jewish time, dancing to Jewish rhythms, using Jewish language to enter more fully into the stream of tradition, to a community of memory which belongs to all of us. Barbara Meyerhoff teaches that a ritual is an occasion when one takes the chaos within the world and within oneself and pours it into a vessel that gives it shape and order and power and form, a meaning-making activity. Ritual makes authoritative and sacred and axiomatic that which it treats, according to Barbara. This can be a breathtaking power, literally the power to make Jews. For the past 50 years, women have taken on the mantle of the rabbinate as teachers, as learners, as weavers, as transmitters of Torah. We have enriched Judaism and widened the circle of Jewish continuity. And so with permission, I would update the conclusion of Elaine Marcus Starkman's poem. We are a generation seeking traditions, transforming symbols, Jewish women, fully ourselves. The Women's Rabbinic Network commissioned a poem and an artistic rendering of it in honor of the 50th anniversary of Rabbi Sally Priesand's groundbreaking ordination. It is a pleasure now to listen to the poem, written and read by Merle Feld, and to appreciate the artistic interpretation of it by Merle's former student and friend, artist Jeanette Couven-Oren.
Let my people go, that we may serve you. For Sally Priesand, HUC JIR 1972, and for Lisa Feld, Hebrew College Rabbinical School 2023. Remember girdles? Remember the anger we weren't supposed to show or even feel. Remember sitting and waiting to say Baruch Hu as someone counted, not one, not two. The being invisible, the tears blinked back fiercely. Remember the love, the innocence assaulted, hearing for the first time those words, and those words, and those, such words in a holy book, demeaning me, you, us. All these years later, I feel the pain rising, constricting, afflicting, remembering, searching for a reason to stay. Love is stronger than death. Tears became anger. That word, the ultimate weapon. She's an angry woman. So we can ignore her, put her down, close our ears and hearts. Blessed be the allies calling for the first time from the Bima. Tamod. The men who broke through the tight circles on Simchas Torah and passed us a scroll to hold, to dance with. The ones who said yes, 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 and yes. And we, the wrestlers, I won't let you go till you bless me. The lust, the longing to learn, to lane, to lead, to bench, to be counted, to be called, to locate our wisdom, to inhabit our power and our tenderness, to build holy communities fully and richly as ourselves, as Jewish women, as rabbis. I won't let you go till you bless me. now and going forward, now and for tomorrow. My heart soars, it flies, it bursts. From Sally to Sandy to Sarah, from Amy to Annie to Ariel. Wave after wave after wave. I see joyous throngs. There's Rachel and Hara, Jen, Jamie, Jessica, Jan, Kara. There's Sharon and Sharon and Sharon. Too many to name. We're just getting started. For so long, the world was unimaginable with you in it. Now, we cannot imagine a world without you. We bless the work of your hands. We bless the work of your hearts. We are blessed to be here now, still at the beginning.
Thank you, Rabbi Carlin Newman, for that beautiful, heart-rending story that you shared, your inspiring words. And I am really excited to introduce this amazing group of rabbis here with us today, who are really the heart of our program. These are women who have shaped the way our movement and our people connect with God, connect with ritual, and connect with prayer. So with us tonight, and you can spotlight them and add them to the screen, are Rabbi Elyse Frishman, Rabbi Denise Eger, Rabbi Jessica Marshall, and Rabbi Dr. Kari Tuling. So to introduce all of these incredible people to you and let you know who you have on this panel tonight, Rabbi Elyse Frishman, you can wave. She was ordained in 1981. She served as a congregational rabbi for 36 years, first at the Reformed Temple of Suffern in Suffern, New York, and then at the Barnard Temple in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. Rabbi Frishman is deeply grateful for their partnerships in shaping sacred community, and both congregations deeply influenced the shaping of Mishkan Tefillah, which Rabbi Frishman edited. Rabbi Denise Eger is the founding senior rabbi of Congregation Kol Ami in West Hollywood, California. She's a past president of the CCAR, and she is the author of the groundbreaking book Mishkan Ga'ava, Where Pride Dwells, a celebration of LGBTQ Jewish life and ritual. She's also the editor of Gender and Religious Leadership, Women Rabbis, Pastors, and Ministers. Now we have Rabbi Dr. Kari Tuling, ordained in 2004. She serves Congregation Kol Chaverim in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And previously, she served as the rabbi at Temple Beth Israel in Plattsburgh, New York, and as a Jewish chaplain, adjunct instructor, and Hillel co-advisor at the State University of New York in Plattsburgh. She's taught at the State University of New York. She's been an academic presenter, a journal author, an adjunct faculty member at the University of Cincinnati, Department of Jewish Studies, and is most recently an author of an incredible book called Thinking About God. Now we have Jessica Kessler Marshall, Rabbi Jessica Kessler Marshall, who passionately leads soul-centered rituals and retreats, spiritually inclusive women's gatherings, and presents at speaking engagements on authentic sacred living. She guides participants into deeper connection with spirit by moving beyond intellect or logic to access soul wisdom so that their paths light up with ease, abundance, and joy. Championing spiritual inclusivity via creative ritual, intentional reflections, mindfulness practices, and the wisdom of the natural world, Rabbi Marshall guides with humor and authenticity and divine presence. So thank you all for being here. It is such an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you for sharing your expertise with all of us. And for those who are watching at home, as we get started with this panel conversation, feel free to put your questions for one or all of our panelists in the chat. After our initial conversation, we'll open the panel up for dialogue. So Rabbi Frishman, will begin with a question for you. As the editor of Mishkan Tefillah, which is really the foundational liturgical text of our generation, how did your gender influence this new paradigm of a Siddur? How has being a woman influenced the way you've chosen to shape sacred community?
Thank you, Rabbi Later. it's probably the most important question about the shaping of our liturgy, and has everything to do with the art of ritual. So first and foremost, as I think Rabbi Carlin Newman stated so beautifully earlier, ritual can't be shaped meaningfully if people are excluded. And we, in thinking about what our liturgical and worship experience should be, looked to who was invisible in the room. And so the first layer of what we focused on was who's invisible, who needs to be included, and what does it mean to have a plurality of voices. So obviously, there were lots of issues that had to do with gender and also with sexual identity. And way back when, as we were exploring these issues in the late 90s and early 2000s, we were pretty naive in a lot of ways. And I think you can see some of the additional growth in our prayer books from the Siddur to the Machzer. And there are lots of stories I can share at another time. But the first had to do with, when we walk into a sanctuary, who's not seen? How do we ensure that in terms of personal experience and also in terms of theology, that everyone in some way is represented, not necessarily on each page, but certainly within each rubric of our prayers. And we worked ardently to try and make that happen. The second really important concept has to do with what Deborah Tannen identified as relational versus hierarchical communication. And when we designed Mishkan Tefillah, our goal was to have complete participation and to actually minimize the role of the Shaliach Tzibur in terms of being the one to say the prayers for everyone else. It's the reason we eliminated italics from the book, because we really thought that this was an opportunity for everybody to be able to own the prayer. I will say to you, sadly, that almost the opposite has happened, that in my experience, when I go from one congregation to another, I find the rabbi or cantor, the clergy, are actually reading all the prayers and people feel excluded. So that's a personal sadness, but that was not the intention of the design. And the goal was to really increase unison prayer, which is a hallmark of Reform prayer, and the participation of each and every individual. Because indeed, I think the hope was to elevate the artistry of each worshiper, and that would enhance everyone's communal experience. And I think that's very much related to how women understand community. And that has also been to do with the shaping of sacred community, that when we believe in partnership, in true partnership, where we may be visionaries, I hope that I'm a visionary. At the same time, I believe that if you don't support the vision because you also share that vision, then it's not a partnership. And if I'm imposing a vision, that's not visionary. So my responsibility is to try and, be able to see forth and to sell, in a sense, and collaborate then on building something even stronger. And that happens in every aspect of the shaping of sacred congregation, but certainly in the context of worship too.
Thank you for those thoughts, and I think that's a really beautiful lead into Rabbi Denise Eger. Rabbi Eger, as the author of Mishkan Ga'ava, can you speak to the process of centering different kinds of voices and human experiences, both in prayer and in ritual?
Thank you, Rabbi Lader. I really appreciate, Rabbi Frishman, your comments about inclusivity, because that is indeed what Mishkan Ga'ava, Where Pride Dwells, tries to do. It shares the Mishkan title, and we have to give a shout out to Rabbi Hera Person, because she was insistent that it really is an extension, Rabbi Frishman, of the work that you started and you continue to do, that it was about that inclusivity. And Mishkan Gava is a collection of prayers and rituals and celebrations centering the voice of LGBTQ plus individuals and community. When we write prayers, if you will. The story that Rabbi Karlin Newman told at the beginning about like who are the prayers for, and LGBTQ plus people have really been left out, and our life cycle and our life moments aren't in the tradition. What happens when we want to celebrate our unions and our marriages, and a lot of the book really came out of my own personal experience as a rabbi serving the LGBTQ community without any resources. So in 1988, when I became a rabbi, there wasn't anything. And so people would come to me and I'd have to like, well, how are we going to celebrate you becoming a parent? How are we going to celebrate your, in those days, commitment ceremonies? What are we going to say in those moments? How are we going to talk about transitioning gender, even way back then? And through the years, I've had to create things, but I'm not the only person. So the wonderful part about this of Mishkan Gava was the invitation to invite others to create and to share the work that they've done through the years. And I think that's what's really, for me, one of the most powerful parts of writing prayers or creating liturgy is that you're bringing in a multiplicity of voices and centering, in this case, LGBTQ experience, which, let's be honest, for a lot at the beginning of our movement and the struggle to include LGBTQ people, there was a kind of political idea to kind of wash the queer experience away and not to really uplift it. We're all the same. We're just Jews like everybody else. But the truth of the matter is that LGBTQ lived experience and the allied experience, those parents of, friends of, family of that aren't LGBTQ, is different. It's a different rhythm. And part of creating authentic liturgy for this community really has to come out of, I think, the lived experience of that community. And so for me, that becomes central to any kind of creative liturgy, particularly as Rabbi Karlin Newman spoke about in her opening section.
I love that. I love that idea that our to whitewash our differences away and say that we're all the same really hinders our ability to be authentic in our prayer. Thank you. Rabbi Tuling.
Hi.
Why is theology important? And as a woman, why is a woman's perspective on theology important to our movement, to our sense of peoplehood?
Well, theology is important because it defines what's possible. It's at very bottom what is, like if you think this is what God is and this is what the world is and this is our relationship, then it very much defines what is and is not possible in your world. And so as a consequence, theology is actually pretty bedrock in terms of, like if you don't think that miracles are in the world, you won't have miracles in your world. I mean, that sounds tautological, but it's not. It's a part of what you think can happen is defined by your theology. If you exclude women from your theology, then we don't get an opportunity to participate in the divine. We don't get an opportunity to be in the image of the divine. We don't get an opportunity to contribute what our experience, our lived experience is like. And especially since women experience a good bit of discrimination and difficulty for being women, that also matters because you're essentially creating a triumphant, this sort of triumphant theology of those who are in charge instead of one that recognizes that all of us are actually vulnerable. All of us need each other. All of us need to be connected in community, and all of us need to actually listen with humility to the divine voice. And so that's why it matters so much. And so we need to get past as a movement this idea that theology is written by white men, basically Ashkenazi men.
And for anybody who wants to know more about that, Rabbi Eger has linked the Rabbi Tuling,
one like nearby
into the chat, which I highly recommend. Thank you. All right, Rabbi Marshall, in your experience, what are the yearnings of the people with whom we're working? How are we creating new ritual? What are people looking for in this moment in time?
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi Lader. And I love following Rabbi Dr. Tuling because what I'm finding more and more with the folks with whom I'm working is a deep yearning for more profound connections to divinity, and really like living from a place of love, from a place of aliveness, from a place of playfulness, feeling a divine connection that feels supportive and trustworthy in their lives. It's like this essential connection to spirit, to the eternal. And so what I've been really exploring with folks is how they can do that from a deep inner place. Like each of our connections to the divine is so unique, and we each connect in different ways. Some of us through nature, some of us through journaling and writing, some of us through silence. But really, when we take that time to connect in, we get to hear the divine speaking in our own voice and be spoken to. And so just kind of creating more of a platter, an expansive platter of ways to connect, and knowing that as we expand the ways that we can connect with Source, we see joy as a portal to the divine. You know, we take the Talmudic quote, like that we're each called to account for all of the pleasures that we didn't enjoy, you know, in this lifetime. How can we expand the ways that we connect? And it's been just such an honor to dream up with the folks with whom I'm working. What are rituals that can really capture this? So, you know, I'm doing things like a mikvah ritual for a woman who is planning to start to try to have children with her husband after a history of sexual abuse. You know, like how can we bless what was and create some sacredness around it, and also bless all that we're feeling called toward and all of the potential. I do a lot with nature because nature has so many metaphors within it for the human experience, right? All of the different cycles that are in nature. So with my wedding couples, you know, before a wedding, going to a stream and doing kind of a creative hand washing ritual with them where they're blessing all of their intentions for their life together, planting trees, you know, and again, putting intentionality into that. So just finding new and creative ways that we can hear the divine speaking in our voice.
And I'm really excited that we get to do that together in just a minute. But one overarching question, you know, you four have really brought us into the new world. Things are feeling good and relevant, although things change so frequently. You know, Rabbi Frishman, when you said that things already feel different than they did when you were crafting Mishkan Tefillah. But my question is where, you know, in your wildest dreams, where are we headed in terms of ritual and liturgy in the future? Like, where are women 50 years from now? If you could hope and dream for where we would be in the future, what does that look like for you? And this isn't open, anybody can take this.
I can start with taking a stab. One of the things that I think a lot about is what happens when we get quiet and we tap into that still small voice that's within. And I think what many of us access is a wisdom that goes deep beyond cultural conditioning, right? So where we can hear the truth that is beyond the narrow societal confines that we're each kind of plunked into. So my dream is really that we're able to connect with a way of being in the world that is so much more authentic and connected and vulnerable and joyous, and everyone elevating each other instead of the, you know, competition that we find is really with this deeper connection to divinity and to truth within, that we can move beyond like the narrow patriarchal confines, you know, that we find ourselves in right now.
Go ahead, Rabbi Tuling.
Okay, trying to mute here. Classic. One of the so this semester I've had the good fortune and great honor of being able to teach at HEC New York. And what's happened there is we've been talking a lot, you know, with the students there And a lot of what they've been saying in terms of where we're going theologically is that they would really like to see us decenter gender in the sense of gender is very present in a lot of our prayers and how we think about God. And so when I asked that question straightforward, where are we going in the future? Tell me what your future looks like. Tell, like, bring me along with you kind of thing. That was exactly the first thing they said. Decenter gender, get it out of, we shouldn't be relating to God as gendered people so much as people. And it's not that we're all the same, but rather that we should be allowed to be as different as we are. So.
I so appreciate that, Rabbi Dr. Tuling. I really appreciate what you're saying in that regard. I really appreciate also, Rabbi Marshall, the sense of quiet. For me, I think, it's not in the quiet, it's in the music. We don't have a cantor with us on this call, on this Zoom panel, but for me, the use and the opportunity to engage in choral music together, which has been part of the problem of the pandemic, because of course Zoom isn't made to sing together in a variety of ways. But I'm going to be a little more radical than just thinking about how music unfolds and chanting and worship. For a long time, I've really struggled with our prayer book. Not Mishkan Tefillah or Mishkan HaNefesh as much as the traditional prayers. And I wonder too if they really theologically reflect where we are at as a movement and where we are at as people. And I wonder if it isn't time to radically rethink the Siddur in ways that even go beyond a nod to tradition. And I wonder if people are really struggling, sometimes as I do. I mean, I say the words of tradition, and I think there's a value in preserving that. Yet on the other hand, I wonder if we couldn't even be more radical in what we're thinking about, not just around gender, but what does it mean? What are we talking about when we talk about God? And are we talking about a being? Are we talking about an entity? Or are we talking something beyond that? And I would like to play more with the ideas of God as spirit and God as the Maimonidean idea of God as intellect, and weave that into becoming the source text of our tradition.
I love everything everybody's saying. I'm a product of NIFTY, and as such, I'm a product of what was called creative services. And what that meant was that every week someone would write a new service, and you'd keep the various, basic prayers in there, and then you'd write your own little creative things all throughout. And certainly Gates of Prayer and every prayer book since then has been influenced by that. The danger of it has to do with sophistication and a jettisoning of the past. So now in my retired years where I actually can study in a very different way, I've gotten very involved in what I would call spiritually intellectual Kabbalah, and I've learned things about about traditional text that I never really understood before. And I see our texts, even our liturgical texts, through a different lens, which isn't to say that there isn't much that still troubles me. But my dream is that those who have succeeded me and will continue to over the decades and centuries to come will be so highly educated that they will be able to look at everything that we possess and can inspire us and take it to the next level without jettisoning it. To be able to say, there is great, deep, profound truth here, but it doesn't touch us because we haven't learned how yet to make that so. And, in theory, that was the concept of the paradigm of Mishkan Tefillah with a right and left-hand page. I think it could go a lot further. It also doesn't mean that I don't think that liturgy should change. I do. I think sometimes liturgy is unethical and it needs to shift. But I wouldn't start from tabula rasa, I want someone to be so incredibly creative and committed to be able to make that rose blossom even more. And I want to get out of the way of it.
I was going to say, well, you have plenty of time now. You don't want to start working on it.
It's not for me to do it. I'm too old. I don't
Well,
see the world the same way. And I want, I want all the young rabbis I know who are so brilliant. It's their turn.
That is it's a really beautiful lead into the next part of our program. Everything all of you said was so beautiful and so brilliant, and I am uplifted by all of the work that so many rabbis out here are doing in order to build stronger connections and lay a stronger foundation so that people can access parts of our tradition that are so meaningful that are sometimes more difficult to access. So tonight, everybody, we have a special treat. We are a group that is not only going to talk about ritual and theology and liturgy, but we are really going to lead everybody. Well, this panel is going to lead everybody through a ritual. So I'm going to hand the proverbial microphone over to Rabbi Marshall to get us started. And I'm really looking forward to participating in the ritual along with everybody else as we connect together as a group tonight.
Thanks so much, Rabbi Lader. We wanted to really create some sacred space to bless this time that we're in and to recognize all that we are holding, our hopes, our burdens, our loneliness, the beauty, the potential, all of it. And so we've created a ritual together that's going to kind of move first from our individual experiences into our collective experiences and then into our transcendent experiences. And we wanted to start first with a beautiful, beautiful blessing that we're going to read together. So I'm going to invite Dave, our amazing tech person, to put it up on the Thank you. This is by Diane New from the book Earth Prayers, and we're going to read it together. I'm going to lead us in the first slide, and Rabbi Carolyn Newman is going to lead us alternatively back and forth. I'm going to invite you to read along with Rabbi Carolyn Newman if that feels good to you. And this is really a blessing about all of the ways that our hands hold all that we experience in life and all that we are holding during this time together. So as we read, we're going to invite you, if there's a line of this blessing that resonates with you, to hold your hands up to the screen and really just notice what resonates and allow ourselves to be seen in all that we're holding together. Blessed be the works of your hands, O Holy One. Blessed be these hands that have touched life. Blessed be these hands that have nurtured creativity. Blessed be these hands that have held pain. Blessed be these hands that have embraced with passion.
Blessed be these hands that have tended gardens. Blessed be these hands that have closed in anger. Blessed be these hands that have planted new seeds. Blessed be these hands that have harvested ripe fields.
Blessed be these hands that have cleaned, washed, mopped, scrubbed. Blessed be these hands that have become knotty with age. Blessed be these hands that are wrinkled and scarred from doing justice.
Blessed be these hands that have reached out and been received. Blessed be these hands that hold the promise of the future. Blessed be the works of your hands, O Holy One.
Thank you, everyone. It was beautiful to see all of those hands in the air and all of the ways that we were each connecting with this blessing. I'm going to invite us now to take a moment to think about your own blessing for your hands and to share it in the chat. So if you were to kind of turn inward for a second to think about all that we're holding in this moment, individually. Blessed be these hands that, and then just open your hearts and see what comes through. Blessed be these hands that, and we'll see what comes through. Oh, beautiful. Blessed be these hands that struggle for justice, that hold our children, that embrace the future, that built our house, that connect members of my community, that have comforted and loved. These are all so beautiful, everyone, that have nurtured life, that have helped a grandchild into a swing, that give love and understanding, that built our house, that struggle for justice, that remain steady and supported and support others, beautiful, that through shaking and trembling still strive for what's next, that knead love into bread to sustain their treasured ones, that have kept our family together through miles about. There's so many more. I invite you to continue reading them on your own. Thank you, everyone, for this beautiful participation. Let's seek hope. Yes, let's seek hope. And I thank you for being brave enough to show up in your truth, in your strength, and with all that you hold. And I'm going to turn it over now to Rabbi Frishman.
Thank you. So I think one of the beauties of what we're doing too is that there is a powerful reflection on the differences in our personalities, and that each of us as rabbis and lovers of people are drawn to different expressions of blessing because of who we are and what we've experienced. So I wanted to share for those who don't know that, you know, in all of our lives, there are personal experiences that frame how we build community and how we draw in the divine. And my husband's and my life was irrevocably changed 2.5 years ago when our 28-year-old daughter was killed by a truck in a biking accident. And I have to say that was shortly after I had retired and literally the day my husband retired. So we were between communities. We had our community where I had been the spiritual leader for 23 years. And then we had this new community that we had, when we moved into New York City, we joined and had just begun to develop relationships. Who was going to cocoon us? Who would we find that would be sacred in our lives? Who would hold us? So Barnard, the community we'd been so engaged in, held us as rabbis. We were friends, but really we were the rabbis. And they held us in our time of grief in a very profound way. And for the first time in our lives, we were Jews in the pew. And we learned what it meant to be individuals, not rabbis, but individuals who had suffered this profound shock to our lives. And so for the first time, we knew what it meant when we went and said Kaddish in this new synagogue to stand as mourners rather than as rabbis, to have friends who sat around us and protected us, to say Kaddish while others were quiet and listened to us, to feel what it meant to be just a Jew. And this moment of crisis was met so incredibly by everyone who stood with us. And over the last 2 years, certainly as we've grieved, but also as we've struggled as American Jews through the radical polarization in our society and through the radical uncertainty that COVID brought to us and the isolation and the existential loneliness that it lifted up. And so I've thought a great deal about what sacred community offers during this entire time, what we know from how we tend to others. How do we then tend to ourselves? And also try to lessen this polarization. How do we welcome people fully? So take a look, please, at the Marge Piercy selection that's coming up. This is the end of her magnificent poem, The Art of Blessing the Day, the final 2 stanzas. And if you would join me in offering this. But the discipline of blessings is to taste each moment, the bitter, the sour, the sweet, and the salty, and be glad for what does not hurt. The art is in compressing attention to each little and big blossom of the tree of life, to let the tongue sing each fruit, its savor, its aroma, and its use. Attention is love. What we must give children, mothers, fathers, pets, our friends, the news, the woes of others. What we want to change, we curse and then pick up a tool. Bless whatever you can with eyes and hands and tongue. If you can't bless it, get ready to make it new. So I think about how we bless what we can and how we change what we feel we cannot yet bless. And perhaps one of my favorite verses of Torah, and I would say of liturgy, is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love the other as yourself. And I want to offer this poem as a piece of liturgy. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Re'echa. It's complicated. Your neighbor, friend, shepherd, your beloved, and your dark side. How can what is beloved be dark? The nature of light is to cast darkness. A true re'echa is both light and shadow, known and unknown. Not one of us is without our shadow. Uncertainty, polarization, distance, all thrive in the shadows we cast. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. The only way to love another as myself is to listen and pay attention to what's not aligned with me. Here's how I usually listen. You speak, and my mind splits off. I hear what you're saying through the ear of what I'm thinking. I'm absorbing in order to respond, to show you, teach you, prove you wrong. Not listening. Listening without hearing. Deciding without understanding. Leaving before arriving. When I don't have the bandwidth to understand you, my heart and spirit begin their decay. It happens when I'm afraid, or when I'm so certain I'm right. And I may be right, and I may have the right to be afraid. But I've found that when I choose to really listen, I learn something. I change. Principle may remain undeterred, but my heart shifts, and then my choices shift. I open a door instead of closing it. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. For me, the ritual of the talit is the ritual of opening a door. And in the spirit of blessing with our hands, I'd love us to try something where we are going to offer a ballet of hands as we symbolically place a talit upon us. What I'd like us to think about is first, imagining your favorite talit. I have many, as perhaps you do too. But my favorite is a tie-dyed garment that I found in a women's workshop in Kenya, where women were learning how to find their way back into society, having been horrifically abused throughout their young lives. And these women were creating these tie-dyed garments to then turn into the beautiful fabric of clothing that they would tailor and then sell. And I thought if I could take this beautiful fabric and create a talit, I would carry them on my shoulders. They would remind me of my privilege, of what I could do more of, and of my heart and my spirit. So think of your favorite talit, what it reminds you of, and the blessing that we offer when we take this garment. We hold it before ourselves. Perhaps you close your eyes. We say the blessing and bring it to our lips. And then we move our hands outward again and we open. And taking one, we drape around ourselves and rest upon our shoulders. We try that again. To take a breath and to open, and in the other direction, to sweep this garment of love and rest it upon our shoulders. The talit connects us. Tikva, hope, a link. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So one more time. And it is my prayer to draw you more to me and for me to be drawn to you.
I too open with a poem. What I am here to do is move us from this present moment into the future. We will start with a poem that helps us center us in this time now. If I could have the poem put up. This is from Marcia Falk. This is from her most recent work. It's titled Nonetheless. Had you come just a few minutes sooner, you might have witnessed the molting, the splitting of the silk, and the sudden bright emergence, the wings filling with blood, the last drops of moisture shaken down, and then the first accents. As it is, you find a single black butterfly, smaller than the flat of your thumb, its underside speckled with baneberry blood, its topside striped with the piercing blue of a late June sky. When you follow it to a slab of mossy rock, you see the whole throng of hatchlings, 1 dozen, 2 dozen butterflies, all dipped in the same midnight ink, all of them together in a spot no bigger than a maple leaf. There, just being there. Enough. So I want you, now that you are wrapped in this talit, to feel enough. You are at this moment embraced by a love so great you cannot know it. By a universe so deep, yet it knows you. By a presence that has been with you always, yet surprises you nonetheless. What I want to do is open up, because we're going to move into the blessing, the threefold blessing
the priestly blessing. And we will bless each other as we move in to the future.
For this next part, I'm going to sing it again, but put in the chat your hopes for the future. You put in the chat what you're holding in your hands. Now we're looking toward what comes next. I just want to add that beautiful piece was written by Rabbi Deborah Dressler's almost son-in-law. They'll be married this weekend and she's on the call. So beautiful piece.
Thank you, Rabbi Later. That was heart-stirring. And as Rabbi Eger so beautifully reminded us, music has the power to transport us and connect us. So thank you for that. I'm just going to offer a blessing to all of us as we bring this conversation to a close for now, and feel so much gratitude for the beautiful conversations that were opened up together and all of the conversations that will continue to come from this. So I'm going to invite us actually to hold our hands up to the sides of the screen, if that feels good, to feel the connection between each other as we offer blessings for good relations and wholeness, learning from each other, for healing, for support for women's rights to self-determination and equality and respect for all people, for expanding compassion, for love given warmly and received warmly, a world of love and dignity, health and peace for everyone, calm, for kindness and justice to kiss, for peace and acceptance, for growth, joy, partnership, and hope. And with so much gratitude for all of the beautiful souls that were with us tonight and will continue to be with us into the future. Ken Yehi Ratzon.
I just want to hold space for the beautiful experience that we just got to be present for, got to create together. My heart is so full, having been able to be present for the conversation, for the prayers, the ritual, the beautiful liturgy. So I want to express gratitude to each of you for spending this time present together with us. And I want to express special gratitude to our panelists, Rabbis Frishman, Marshall, Eger, Rabbi Dr. Tuling, as well as to Rabbis Later and Karlin Newman for joining together in creating this beautiful program this evening and laying the framework and moderating so beautifully as well. And I also want to express gratitude to my co-president of WRN, Rabbi Beth Klafter, for her hard work overseeing this entire series and making it happen and working with each of our panelists and creators of these programs. She joined us from Israel, like in the middle of the night. And so Beth, Rabbi Klafter, we're just grateful to you and treasure you. So I want to just highlight a few things. If you enjoyed this program, it's a wonderful precursor to an upcoming program with the CCAR Press Speaker Series. Two of our panelists will be part of that series, and that will be on Wednesday, May 4th. I believe that this was also put in the chat, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Rabbis Eger and Frishman, who are with us tonight, will be part of that, as well as Rabbi April Davis and Rabbi Elaine Zecher. And the program will focus on women rabbis and their impact on our liturgy. So wonderful building off of this program. And we also want to mention again, as Rabbi Zamor did at the beginning of our time together, that our next program in our speaker series honoring the 50th anniversary of Rabbi Presand's ordination, we hope you'll join us for Paving the Path Ahead, Creativity and Innovation. Details on panelists and on further about the topic for that program will be forthcoming in the coming days, May 11th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We hope you will sign up and attend. And finally, again, we hope that you will consider supporting WRN's work, not only creating experiences like this, but working to create greater equity for folks of all genders in the Jewish world. And we want to especially highlight the Rabbi Sally J. Presand Endowment Fund for Equity in Jewish Life. And I believe that that link was put in the chat at least once, if not multiple times already. Again, thank you all so much for spending this time with us. Thank you again to our panelists, to Rabbis Later and Karlin Newman for arranging this, to Rabbi Klafter. I hope you each have a beautiful evening. I know that mine has been significantly uplifted by participating in this program. Thank you again.